Today on The Art of Feeling Better, I become the guest. And in this episode, I had the pleasure of joining the incredible Amira Davis from the Shifted podcast over in New York City for an amazing conversation. We're talking about the exhaustion of being a woman over 40, quietly living through this overachieving hustle mentality and the slow erosion of self. I share my own authentic journey through burnout and the identity shifts that come when you spend decades showing up for everyone else. Because here's the truth, your ambition didn't break you, the system you were operating in did. And there's a way out that doesn't require you to shrink. Are you ready? Here's the full episode.
I'm Amira Davis, mom of 3, wife, daughter, sister, and a business owner with my husband. But this right here, this is mine, and it matters because every woman deserves a place that's just hers. If you've ever felt yourself changing and wondered who you're becoming, pull up a chair. We're getting honest about all of it, the shifts, the questions, the stuff we usually keep quiet. Welcome in. You know that feeling when you've done all the work, read the books, had the insights, maybe even done some therapy, but you're still operating from the same old patterns. You're still saying yes when you mean no. You're still running on empty and feeling like there's a gap between who you know you could be and who you're actually showing up as. My guest today, Jane Bellis, calls this the difference between collecting insights and actual integration. And if you're tired of keeping yourself small but also exhausted from pushing harder, this conversation is going to land with you differently. I'm Amira Davis, and this is the Shifted Podcast, the show for women who are ready to navigate midlife with intention, boundaries, and a whole lot less drama. Today, I'm talking with Jane, a sacred nervous system and shadow integration coach from Wales. I was so excited to get her on here. She works with women who are done with survival mode but aren't interested in healing by just grinding harder. Her approach blends neuroscience-aware coaching with shadow work, and I love that she describes it as not fluffy, but deeply transformational. So if you're sensing there's something deeper available to you, but you're not sure how to access it without burning yourself out in the process, you're going to want to stay tuned for this one. Welcome to the Shifted Podcast, Jane.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. So before we dive in, we have a little ritual where we raise a glass to something that we're celebrating or we're grateful for. What are you raising your glass to today?
Well, Amira, I thought you'd appreciate the slogan, the quote that's on my cup of Welsh tea. This evening over here at 7 p.m. And it's a quote from Emmeline Pankhurst, a suffragette. And it says, "I incite this meeting to rebellion."
I love it.
I thought that would be a great way to just raise a toast to all the ladies out there who are just done with playing small, done with being performative and putting themselves at the end of the list and ready to step into their power and to reclaim their voice and learn all about their identity, their passion and their actual purpose. So here's to you.
I love that. Thank you.
Cheers.
I've got my moment. My non-alcoholic Mango Glow from Moment. It's a botanical. So I've been drinking these lately because I can't drink wine anymore. I used to love my wine. I've got a bunch of it over there and it was making me sick. So it's a menopause thing.
Wow. It is interesting. I've not drank alcohol for so many years because it just started to disagree with me. So yeah, cup of tea for me.
Same. I love it. I also have tea. So I love liquids. I have an issue with liquids. I also have my tea in here, hot tea.
Great.
And my water.
Great. You're prepared.
So tell us about your path to this work. So what led you to focus specifically on nervous system and shadow integration? Because I love nervous system work.
Okay, so my story, my journey is very twisty-turny, lots of side quests, lots of things that have led me to the point that I'm at now. And it would take probably 3 or 4 more podcasts for me to talk about my story. But I'll give you the short version that's kind of relevant to where we are now and that's going to set the tone for our conversation. And it really is, it's been a journey since childhood for me being a very, very sensitive, empathic little girl that was just trying to find her place in the world and then finding that all these labels from parents, from society, from family, from culture, having to perform to these roles for many, many, many years and really becoming disconnected with myself, with who I am and what I was meant to do and the journey to motherhood. I have 4 children, so all through my life, right from early childhood, all through my teens and my 20s and my 30s and my 40s, because I'm getting older now. It's been a series of really deep learnings, but it's been all about taking off the mask for me and experiencing some really severe burnouts during my career when I was raising babies and I had my cape on and superwoman, and I was being all things to all people and, really hustling and trying to claim a medal that didn't even exist, that kind of, if I work harder, I might be accepted and I might win something, I might be chosen, and somebody will finally see the struggle and choose me, because I've always been last of the list. Women our age, we have a lot in common with that. And it's been quite a journey to get to the point from my last burnout many years ago when I realized it's me. I'm the problem. I'm the problem here. Yeah, who knew? I created my own monster here. And it then sent me on a journey out of my old industry, which is fashion and beauty and all of the shiny, performative, surface level stuff, to retrain in psychotherapy and neuroscience and all of the cool brain, human behavior kind of things.
Yeah.
And all the discoveries along the way of why I felt the way I did and why my thoughts, my feelings and my behaviors were kind of having this impact. And I'd always be in these cycles, right? These cycles of why does this always happen to me? And why am I always responsible? And why do people always come to me for fixing? And, I'd created that monster, and it took me a while to kind of suss that out. And really it's been getting to this authentic space where I can really feel comfortable settling into my truth and delivering my medicine. This is why I call it my medicine. That real balance between the super scientific and the super spiritual, neither of which were accepted in my culture, in my family, in my community growing up. I was always too spiritual for the scientific community and way too clinical for the woo-woo spiritual community. And I never really could come to terms with that. So I used to put a series of masks on to try and perform to people please. What do you want me to be today? Who do I need to be accepted? And then finally, through a lot of shadow work and a lot of, real deep reflective work and peeling back the layers and weeding, kind of realized that my place is right here in the middle, and my truth, my authentic voice is actually the power that I have. And that's what I'm sharing with other women now. Interestingly, I've worked with people, all different demographics over the years, done a lot of work in the trauma space. But now women, I'm really feeling the call to work with women, especially women of my age. And women are feeling the call to work with me. My inbox is just inundated at the moment. So the time is obviously right for that. I think people are ready.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about shadow work, because I think a lot of people don't know what shadow work actually is.
Do you know what? If there's one thing that I could leave behind, it is just the knowledge that shadow work is the most important thing you can do. And there's a bit of a myth or a kind of a perception that shadow work's scary stuff, right? Because you think shadow, darkness, I don't like it, it's scary. But it really simply is about illuminating. It's about shining a light on the things that you keep hidden and repressed and that you move away from or you distract yourself from because they've been painful in the past. But when you actually shine the light on it and you bring those things forward to be metabolized and worked through, it's a game changer. Your life completely changes if you can have the courage to look into this topic.
It takes a lot. It's interesting. I think you and I talked about this when we first met. We didn't talk about the shadow work part, but I think I might have told you that I was really big into the AI space. And I had taken a picture of myself when I was like 4 years old. And then I took a picture of myself when I was like 24 or 34, something like that. And little me was being held by bigger me. And it brought me to tears because I was like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. Like my father couldn't wrap his head around it. But for me, I was like, the only person that could tell my little self that you're pretty cool and like you're a really good thing. So I think shadow work is one of the biggest things. I really, really like it.
It's incredible. In a child, it's meeting yourself at all the different parts in your life where you've given away your power or where things have happened that you've not been able to kind of work through. And it's bringing them to light and it's you doing the work, you reparenting yourself, you telling yourself that you're okay, you're good, we've got this now. And it's such a powerful piece of work that a lot of people don't ever get to experience. And that, that's my purpose, is to try and bring that to as many people as possible.
I love that. So in your work, you mentioned working with high capacity women who are neurodivergent and in major identity shifts. What are you seeing as a common thread in women who find you?
Do you know what? It's a really, really good question. I've been thinking about that since we had our conversation because it has been really prevalent. There's just so many neurospicy women of a certain age who are just screaming out for something and they're just ready and you can feel it in your bones that there's something and you don't quite know what. And I think it's from my own lived experience. It's the same thread that binds us together, that we have had these lifetimes, particularly as Gen X women. It's a very different generation, I think, that we've come along at this point in time now. We've had all of these labels and all of these roles kind of thrown on us. And it's very different to the boomers. It's very different to what we're seeing now in generations. this hyper independence and this, you have to hustle, you have to grind, this really masculine energy. And I talk a lot in my work about divine feminine, divine masculine energy, because energy is my first language, right? I love the
Yeah.
science, but I am inherently a very, very spiritual person, and energy is where it's at. So I operate, and a lot of women, high performing neurospicy, I call neurospicy, women operate from this very masculine space, survival of the fittest, compete, get to the top of the ladder, hustle. It's all about action, and we lose touch and we lose the part of ourselves that's inherently divine feminine. We lose this self-compassion, we lose the nurturing, we lose the ability to pause and to connect in and to actually feel into our own body's intelligence and understand what we need. Because we're taught not to. We're taught that we're not, that's not important. You wait your turn. You have to fix everything else. You have to be the best. You have to earn. Emmeline Pankhurst, the suffragettes, I don't believe for 1 minute that they would have gone through what they went through so that we could work 16 hours and be the mother and make the dinner and do the school. We were meant to do absolutely everything. It was meant to be in balance, and we've just gone really, we've gone wrong somewhere along the way, and we've lost ourselves. And I think that's what I'm finding with the women that are approaching me. They're feeling the same thing. They know it's not right, but they don't quite know how to extract themselves from these lives that they've created, because on the surface of it, like my career in fashion, New York Fashion Week, the highlight, I ticked all the things off my bucket list, and I should have been happy with that.
Yeah.
But I was so unfulfilled, so burnt out, in so much pain. And a lot of women are experiencing that. What now? I thought this was going to fix everything and be right. And it just isn't.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just about reclaiming, and it's about relearning the things that we've lost, I think, along the way.
I know we can go forever in this and talk about it, but when we're talking about Gen X women especially, I notice in a lot of the work that I do with women that we were taught, survival of the fittest, dog eat dog. There cannot be more than one person in fashion. There cannot be more than one person in anything that you're doing. And I think that we're trying to get away from that. And it's interesting because I had a talk with somebody, I would say she's a millennial probably. And we were talking about that whole dynamic. And she said, I think you're wrong. She goes, I don't think people think that way. And I said, I think you probably are correct for the age group that you're talking about. But the way I grew up, it was always there can be one executive director, and anybody that's under them, they're going to make your life miserable because there's only room for one of us. And so I think, to your point, we're kind of releasing that a little bit and saying, no, as women, if we work together, we can do so much more. And we just need to be able to get on the same page with this. And I think that's where people are starting to see, like myself, I've seen a huge shift, and I keep thinking to myself, something is going to change. Like, there's something going on, and I can't put my finger on what it is.
You can feel it, though. You can feel it.
Absolutely. I'm like, it's happening. I just don't know when or where, or, how it's going to happen. But I'm like, there is a huge dynamic, or maybe I'm just on that side of threads and Instagram or whatever. But I do 100% see that.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think and it's interesting because it depending on where the conversations go when I speak to people, when I do podcasts, sometimes we lean more into the psychotherapy and the neuroscience, which I know you're really interested in. And sometimes I'm kind of guided to talk more about the metaphysical stuff. And I know, not woo-woo, transformational. I like to sit in that space. And I think what you're talking about is there's a huge shift. And whether you are interested or you align with this kind of stuff or not, you can't deny that something is happening and something is shifting. And we've had hundreds and thousands of years of this very masculine patriarchal energy. And this isn't about boys versus girls or bash the men or win. It's not. It's about energy, and it's about how we're so out of balance. And we see it playing out, and we know we're not going to get political. I promised myself that. But you can see it. It's playing out, and everything's on fire. Everything's falling. Here in the UK, our health system is shot to pieces, the education system, social, everything. And it was all based on this kind of dynamic, this energy of, this is the structure. You fit into a box, and we're at the top, and it's the survival of the fittest, as you say. And that's not normal or natural for our survival. And I think women especially, and especially Gen X women, which is probably why the millennials aren't quite feeling the same, we are really recognizing in our bones and in our bodies that we need to operate differently. And it's survival of the species depends on it. We have to move into that feminine collaboration, co-production, compassion. And my personal experience is, and if we get time, I'll talk a little bit more about it when I talk about the nervous system, is there is a difference between power and force. And we are in this force, or we have been in this space of forcing things and pushing through and abusing ourselves really and each other and this force space. But when we step back and we really recalibrate and we do the work, you actually can step into power, and that is infinite. It's huge. There's so much power that we have if we can do it the right way, and if we can do it together as women. It's a game changer. This is the paradigm shift that we're moving into now, is that women need to be doing this work so that we can have a new leadership, different kind of leadership.
Yeah,
it's what we
I
need. And it's
agree.
what's happening. It's happening. It's just how it plays out. Who knows?
Yeah. And we're finding each other because, I mean, I'm in New York. You're in the UK. Like, we're not right near each other. So I think it's just we're finding the ones that are feeling the same, and it's happening. So, all right. So
Yeah.
let's talk about nervous system work, because I do love that too. So for
Yeah.
someone who's new to thinking about their nervous system in relation to personal growth, how do you explain what sacred nervous system work actually means?
Okay, so this is my baby, and I get really animated when I talk anyway, but I get
Yeah.
super animated about this. So this is something that's non-negotiable. You cannot do any kind of self-development work. Quite a claim, but I stand on this. You can't do any kind of self-development work. You cannot put any boundaries in place. You cannot experience true well-being and true growth without focusing first on your nervous system. It just can't happen. And for those, your listeners out there that aren't familiar at all with the nervous system, you have two strands to your nervous system. You have a sympathetic nervous system, which we know as fight or flight. And there's actually freeze and flock and fawn, which is my big piece of work, is fawn response, that people-pleasing drive a lot of women especially have. And it goes hand in hand with the flock response, perfectionism, and it keeps us locked into this space of, we have to make sure everybody else likes us, and we have to make sure everything's perfect to be accepted and validated. And that's a sympathetic nervous system response. But we have our parasympathetic nervous system, which is known as rest and digest. And that's where we should be. We're supposed to be in this expansive, creative, calm space where we can feel at peace. We can communicate effectively. We can connect in with the environment, with nature, with our families, with our communities. And unfortunately, in the West, especially, we have our switches flicked to sympathetic nervous system 24 hours a day. So we're in that red space where we're constantly hyper alert, hyper aware. And I've got my little toy here that I use when I'm teaching. So I thought I'd bring it to the conversation. So this represents a little part of your brain called the amygdala. I'm sure you're aware of it, Mira, but the amygdala sits right in the center of your brain, and it's your fear radar. And all it does is it scans the horizon 24 hours a day for danger. And when it perceives a danger, it will start to do this, right? And I'm really close to the camera here, but you get the message. It does this, right? It's really cool way to explain it. This is how I tend to explain the deep science stuff, really nice and easy. So if you imagine, in our evolutionary past, that was a really important function, because if we were being chased by a bear, we'd have to have that function to instantly send us into fight or flight, because we needed adrenaline and cortisol to, our energy would go to our arms and legs to run away or to fight, and our cells would be inflamed so that they could start to repair before we're even caught. It's a sophisticated piece of kit, and it's secured our survival as a species, but it's only meant to be in short bursts. And then we're meant to go back and flip the switch back. We process and purge those hormones, and then we go back into rest and digest. Now, what's happening now is we don't do that. We never seem to get out of fight or flight because somebody doesn't like our comment, or we've got a presentation to do tomorrow, or we're worried about what's going on with our family dynamic or our children, or the pressure of, these labels. So we're constantly caught in this sympathetic nervous system response. And it's so detrimental to health, because this adrenal fatigue, which I experienced firsthand with all my burnouts, and the level of cortisol overload, which leads to things like fibro and chronic fatigue and blood pressure issues and thyroid issues and all this pain, that we then go with symptoms to hand away our power to somebody to just fix these symptoms. I remember saying to the doctor at the hospital, "Fix me quickly, I'm too busy for this. I have to get back to work. I'm a mother, I can't stop. You need to fix this symptom." Painkillers for years. I had really bad issues with painkillers. But my body was telling me something was wrong, and I hadn't learned yet to lean into that and to listen to my nervous system. And for me, the most important part of that when you're thinking about self-development is there's one of the things that happens when your amygdala kicks off is the shutters come down on your prefrontal cortex. So the part of your brain that's responsible for logic and reasoning shuts off. So you cannot get into a space where you are looking at self-development and progress, and that creative mind is not there because it's not needed at that moment. All you need to do is fight or flee at that point. Yeah. That's where we're in that hustle and that aggression and that defensiveness, and we can't see, we have no clarity because we're constantly stuck in this neurobiological response. So my biggest teachings of that, the entry point to Mojo School, is just understanding that first of all, to kind of get to grips with what's happening. But then you need to be able to do some actions, right, off the back of it. It's no good just knowing things without being able to have a practical application to go with it, right?
Yeah. It's funny, I probably didn't mention this to you before, but I was in that state for a really long time, and I've got pictures up of myself where, my face was just so inflamed from, high cortisol and all the other things that were going on. And I remember for probably a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, maybe even 3, I would be at a point where when I would get stressed or I would get annoyed or anything that would be reactionary, I could feel in the back of my head would start to like tremor. Like my head would literally start to tremor. And I remember saying to somebody, I said, I feel like my brainstem is just tremoring, like something is going on. And I would be like, there's something wrong and whatever. And they had gotten to the point where they were giving me Xanax. And they're like, the only thing that would calm me down would be to take a Xanax.
Mm-hmm.
And I was prescribed a stupid amount at one point. Like I never took the amount that I was prescribed, but I had it if I needed it. And I would only take like a half of a pill and I'd be fine. But it was like the only way that I could control the way I was feeling was that add in perimenopause and menopause to that, and your hormones are shifting and everything else. And I was just a mess. And so I started doing all the research on your nervous system and stuff. And I think that's what was so interesting to me.
Is it crazy that we just, it's something called in psychology called a locus of control, and you either have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. And external means you just hand away your power. You don't realize that you have all the answers, right? As cliche as it sounds, it's all within you. You have the answers. You're just not listening. Your body's intelligence, it has its own language. And we just immediately hand over the control and the power to somebody else, whether it's a therapist or a teacher or a guru or a doctor, or fix me. And that's just symptom management, right? It's just symptom management, not to get political again, but they don't call it the health industry for nothing, right? It's big business. So symptom management makes so much money, but true healing is where it's at. And we have the capacity for that. And I have this conversation so much about, again, the wellness industry. It can be just as toxic because I don't know whether you know this, but there is no such thing as a healer. There just isn't. There aren't healers. There are people who facilitate space for healing. And I learned that the hard way when I stepped out of my old career. And then I kind of had the same behavior patterns as a fixer and went into this healing space where I'm okay now. I'm great. I'm now a healer. I'm going to fix everyone. No, I'm not. It's bullshit. Of course I'm not. That's not how it works, right? It's not how it works. It's the same poor behaviors on my part, just in a different way. But there are some gifted people out there who facilitate and hold space, but you do the healing. It's person-centered. The person has the answers. They just need sometimes some guidance and a safe, an emotionally and psychologically safe space to kind of work through some stuff. And that's shadow work.
I love that. So speaking of shadow works, so shadow integration is a term that gets thrown around a lot, especially now. How do you define shadow work, and why is it particularly important for women that are in midlife?
So again, I could talk about this for days and days on end. It's such an important piece of work. There's so much information there. But I think the best way that I can explain this is to draw your attention to what I call the sacred nervous system in my piece of work. And there's a really cool guy who is an American psychiatrist, actually, when he was alive, called Dr. David Hawkins. Have you come across that name before?
No, but I'm going to write that down.
Cool. You'll love this. Okay, so one of my favorite books, Power versus Force. If you haven't read it, just read it. A lot of my work is based on David Hawkins' work and also Jungian psychology. So I had a real interest in the psyche and deeper human behavior. Yeah. And it really tallied in with my shamanic practice as an energy worker. The shamanic practice was the same, right? It was working in these spaces that people don't like to work. I loved David's work when I came across it. It was at least 15, maybe 20 years ago when I came across his work. And I'm seeing lots more people talking about it, which it just lights me up because I know that this is powerful medicine and other people are talking about it. And he is a psychiatrist. So I love anybody who has the same kind of flavor as me. You're really interested in the data and you want to find this scientific stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you're not so caught up in that you forget we don't actually know anything yet, right? There's so much more. The metaphysical space is so important. And ancient wisdom bridges that gap, right? But he set up a lot of work around spiritual development as well, which is cool, like a little combination. And he actually managed to put together some data around the nervous system in terms of frequency. And this is such a powerful tool when you're looking at integrating and you're looking at doing shadow work and working through this stuff, because he's managed to plot emotions as vibrational frequencies. And things like shame and apathy and fear are very, very low vibrational frequencies from about 20 hertz up to about 80. And if you think about the world and where we're at, most people are stuck in those spaces. It's either shame, I don't want to be judged, there's something wrong with me, people won't accept the real me, fear, or apathy, just complete freeze, can't do anything. And everyone's stuck in that space. And this is the reason why, if you've got all of the self-development books, you've got all the tools, you've been on all the courses, you've got vision boards coming out of your ears and nothing is changing, because you can't think your way out of this stuff. But you can have the knowledge, and I teach that a lot, but if what you're putting out is rooted in this subconscious program from childhood around shame or fear or apathy or, anger, that's what you're throwing out, and you manifest more of the same thing. So you bring in more of these experiences because your body has these emotions trapped and it's waiting for you to catch up and metabolize them. So we have all these snapshots layered up inside of our bodies from our experiences. And if we haven't been able to work through them at the time, they just get stuck. So my big piece of work now is supporting people through that process to kind of work out where they're at on this nervous system scale, and what what their energy is actually doing, where these trapped emotions live. What are they trying to tell you? What is that little, I call it little Jane, my inner child, or little Amira. What does she need at the time that she didn't get? And let's just do that piece of work, and let's just witness and validate and hear what that part of you has to say. And it's sometimes as simple as that. You can have really soft, gentle ways to do this work. And you start to find that you have these real penny drop moments, and you start to feel different, and you start to, work your way through some of this stuff. And that's shadow work, right? You kind of shine a light on the things that you've run away from for so long, or that you've repressed, or maybe you've distracted yourself by scrolling or shopping or work or sex or food or whatever else it might be. And you finally let yourself pause in that terrifying space where you're not hustling, even though your body is primed for fight, must do more. You sink down, you hit pause, you build some safety around yourself to actually look at what's going on and what's driving this stuff in the subconscious in the background. And that way you can work your way through this, what we call a sacred spiral, working through the nervous system and repairing some of those wounds and healing some of that stuff that's been waiting for so long. And it's such powerful, absolutely game-changing work, because if you think, we were discussing at the beginning about high-performing women in particular, you have a certain bandwidth, and most of us fill that up with crap. We fill it up with other people's shit, with other people's roles. I'm speaking for myself, but I know that it's true for a lot of women out there. You become this martyr, this part of your personality. Well, I have to do it. I have no choice. Yeah. That's what's expected of me. And inside, you're thinking, well, if I just keep going and hustling and doing this, one day somebody is going to see me and say, oh, you've done enough now. And spoiler alert, ain't gonna happen. You're the only one that can do that. And you have to listen to your body for the cues to do that, right? But if you think about your bandwidth is full, there's no room for anything that you were meant to be doing, your actual purpose. And that's why we feel so disjointed and misaligned. But when you start to do this work, you just shift, you free up capacity, and you free up loads of bandwidth. And the people and the situations and the relationships and the job roles that aren't meant for you, they seem to just take themselves out the back door, and things fall away. And then new people and new opportunities that you're meant to be start to fill up the space, because you've created the space for them, right? And then you start to think, wow, feels better. And then you lean into that work even more, and then more good things happen. It's manifesting in action, but it's done from a real solid place of integrating it all.
It's fascinating. I love this so much. So you've got a medicine wheel framework. So how does this approach different from more traditional coaching or therapy models?
So I would never want to come across as disrespecting or bashing any other modalities or any other spaces. But part of my authentic voice is to kind of call some stuff out. So I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. And in a lot of therapeutic spaces, and there's a lot of data coming out about that now as well, things like talking therapy, which work brilliantly for many people. Great. Some people it doesn't work so well for, and there's a lot of data coming out that sometimes it can be counterproductive, and going over the same traumas time and time and time again just kicks off again. It's a nervous system, because there's no tool then to settle a nervous system. There's no somatic stuff to help the body manage these things. It's just top down. That's what we call it, with a top down approach. Same with somatic therapies for me. There's some amazing, incredible, and I love all of these things, right? But I think you have to have balance. You have to have lots of options so that the person can pick what works for them and build their own toolkit. When it's too prescriptive, again, we move into this industry space where people are in therapy for 20 years. That's business, right? That's business. And that is codependency, which is, people are going to hate me for that if you're in the therapy space, but I've been there. I've been in that space where I've created codependent relationships because I felt like I was fixing, and then these people have to come back for more, right? Because the only time they feel okay is when they're with me and I'm fixing and I'm doing great and I'm being accepted, and the people feel great because they feel like they've been fixed. But that's not good for either party, right? Nobody gets to move and expand and grow. So it takes a lot of reflection if you're in the therapy space to kind of check yourself on that. And I think there's a real danger with that. And so when I was starting to move into this space and to, again, my own shadow work was calling out my own bad behaviors some of the time. And this isn't okay, actually. This is coming from a wounded space, not a healed space. Ethically, I'm in a position of power here and I shouldn't be coming to the table with this amount of shit. I need to go and do that work and then come back. And so when I spent a lot of time building Mojo School, so I was digitizing a lot of the tools and the content and the learning, the lessons that we tested out over 10 years in the field. And it brought me back again, and I've said it probably 3 times now, so it's definitely part of why I need to be speaking about, is balance, right? And actually honouring and respecting all parts of self, not just one. And, when somebody has one modality, that modality might be incredible, it might work for a lot of people, but we need to make sure that they're also exposed to other things. Since I was in my teens, I've been on my own spiritual journey. I'm a shamanic practitioner, and that's my heart, is this kind of work. And living in Wales, we have a Celtic version, but there is a version of a medicine wheel in every Indigenous culture all over the world, a kind of a blueprint for what it means to be human. So when I was building my online school and I was leading into tech and AI and the neuroscience and the very sciencey space, I've just felt that I couldn't do it without bringing in ancient wisdom, because it wasn't right, because we needed that balance to have everything supported. And the medicine wheel framework is really simple. If you think of the circle as the whole person, and your listeners can do this. I do it as an activity in some of my workshops. You can draw a circle on a piece of paper and then you put it into quarters. So you put it in half and then quarters, and there's 4 parts of the circle. And the medicine wheel says that each of those 4 parts, the 4 parts of self that you have to meet in balance in order to be well. And it just makes so much sense to me. So you have the mental plane, you have the mental space. We have mental health, super important. We know that. And the top-down approach sits there. All of the CBT and NLP and the neuro stuff is within that mental plane. But if we focus solely on that, we miss the other 3 parts, right? So we can't be well because we're not meeting it in balance. So physical health is another quarter. And obviously we have nutrition and we have lots of things that go with physical health. But it's also about connection in with your body, somatics, great somatic therapies, how to breathe properly, things like pendulating and orienting, and things like EFT tapping therapy. There's lots of body-based things that are really useful here that you cut out the need for any talking therapy. Some people just respond so well to body-based therapies and that works for them. But you're still missing half the picture, right? So your emotional health is probably where I sit the most, where you have these emotion is energy in motion, right? You have this unprocessed set of crap that you've inherited your whole life that's stored in your body, these emotional wounds that you try and think yourself out of, or you mask because it's not acceptable. I just have to hustle and just get on with it. But when we focus on that emotional quarter, you can start to find really creative, safe and calm ways to work through the trapped stuff. And that's really, I think, where the alchemy and the magic happens, is in that emotional literacy space. And then you have the final quarter, which is in all of the traditional medicine wheels, it's spiritual development. And I'd wrestled with that terminology for so many years, because every time I went into the medical space or the educational space, they wouldn't have me. And this work's so important, because there was an assumption that I was talking about a particular religion. Well, religion has nothing to do with spirituality. It's part of it. It can be, that can be it for you, right. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about connection in with something bigger than self, and that can be different for everybody. There's a certain set of universal principles that kind of you can work through around spiritual development. Sometimes I have to tweak the language to self-development if I really have to, but it doesn't feel as authentic. But
Yeah.
we talk about, self-leadership, and we talk about connection, community, and all of those kind of things. A little bit of energy anatomy and energetic work. But if you don't meet those four parts in balance in your own way and find a way that works for you, I get a lot of ladies when they first come to me, they'll kind of, what do I do? Give me the prescription. Tell me step by step the
Yeah.
expectation to be fixed. It's an adventure. We have to go on an
Yeah.
adventure because I don't know. I have no idea what's going on inside you, but I'll help you kind of uncover it because
Yeah.
you are going to build, do the toolkit. And that's quite scary sometimes. People are like, oh, I don't know. I've always been told what to do. Just tell me. So we have to do this work and meet all those four parts in balance. It's an adventure. Think of it as a hero's quest, trying to weed out the things. And there's lots of assessment tools that I've got to help you understand which bits need most work, which bits are out of balance. But I just think everyone needs to know this. We need to understand it and teach our future generations. Yeah, it needs to be
Yeah.
in school. It needs to be on the curriculum in schools. If kids learn this stuff early on, I think we'd live in a very different world.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We for sure. Like I just talked to my 23-year-old yesterday. We were talking about healing trauma and generational trauma based on, somebody had done something dumb yesterday with me. And I had talked to my son about it. And he's like, you've actually gotten to the point where you're healing generational trauma. And, clearly these people haven't healed. And so it's just interesting hearing like even the younger ones talk about how we've evolved so much from where we were.
I'm seeing in a lot of not everybody, but a lot of younger people are calling it out for what it is. And I think that kind of the generations coming through now can see it far more clearly than we can from our rigid, like you said, that
Yeah.
rigid hustle perspective. They're kind of like, no, I don't think that's right. I don't like this, which is, it's good to see that there's that
Yeah.
kind of awareness. They're just not equipped and the environment's wrong. They might know it and feel it in their bones, but the system's still set up to keep them kind of locked in.
Yeah. Something's got to change. So
For sure.
let's talk about boundaries from a nervous system perspective. I know we talk about boundaries here. How does regulation change the way we set and maintain boundaries? I told my husband this a while ago. I said, he said, what would you have done differently in marriage and stuff? And I said, I probably would have had a lot more boundaries in place in my, late teens, early 20s, and that's probably growth too, but looking at the things that I accepted or dealt with in my 20s and 30s wouldn't fly now at all. I think I have way more boundaries and I don't care as much where, when I was younger, I cared so much about, well, are they going to be mad at me? Is somebody not going to want to talk to me? And now it's like, don't talk to me. You don't have to talk to me.
Okay. Yeah.
I
That does
prefer
come
it.
with age, I think. Yeah, so great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think that does come with age, and it does come with these puberty's feral older sister menopause steps in the room, and
Mhm.
then it helps you put boundaries in because you can't help it. But I think
Yeah.
that's all. I think that's all part of it. It's all part of this self-awareness. The things that have been in our bodies for so long that should have been dealt with. There's no choice. We get to our age and it's like, well, it's coming out now. You didn't
Yeah.
deal with that, so here you go. But I think to answer your question, I teach this quite a lot. And it's sometimes even just this, explaining this is a bit of an eye opener for people. You cannot put any boundaries in place until you know who you are and until you know what lights you up, what doesn't work for you. And if you're stuck in this fawn response, this trauma drive of people pleasing, you're constantly looking and waiting for somebody to put your boundaries in for you to show you how to behave. So you have to do these inner pieces of work and this integration and manage your body and understand what your needs are. If you've never even thought about your needs before, that's quite a journey, isn't it? So understanding what you need and what works for you and what doesn't. Then you start the process of being able to bring the word no into your vocabulary, which is just as difficult when you're a people pleaser. I think a piece of work for me when I was going through this experience is finally understanding that the people who have benefited from your lack of boundaries are not suddenly going to wake up one day and say, this is it now, it's enough. We really need to put some boundaries in for you. That's never going to happen. And that's what your little person inside is just waiting for that day where you will be chosen, you'll be loved, you'll be accepted, because that's where the wounding is. But you're the only person that can do that. It's a package that goes together, I think, because when you're stuck in that space, your body will tell you it's wrong, and that's your nervous system talking. So when you build in the tools and the understanding around why your body's freaking out and you feel like you're in danger, right? Your amygdala is telling you that your attachments are going to be broken, you're going to be shunned, you're going to be ridiculed. And in your little brain, that means death. That's
Yeah.
your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a
Right.
conversation and a saber-toothed tiger. So your body will give you such a response with your nervous system that you then stop yourself from putting those boundaries in. So I believe it has to be done all at the same time. You have to be very gentle and compassionate with yourself and understand that you need to take things slowly, and you have to have some conversations. And I've got loads of tools. I'm sure you've got the same, even some scripted tools if you're not used to saying no and you really struggle with boundaries. Just the power of the pause, just a couple of seconds to pause, and reframing things and using language in a different way so that you're not saying no, but you're not giving a hard boundary quite yet. You buy yourself some time. Lots of things in kind of psychotherapy space that help manage that situation. You have to understand yourself first, because you don't know what the boundaries are if you don't do that piece of work.
I love what you said. You will never be able to set boundaries unless you know who you are. That's really powerful. I mean, it's basic, but unless you're saying it out loud, I love that. Yeah.
Isn't it true? Because I started to think about it deeper and it just made so much sense. And whenever I say it now in a workshop, if I'm teaching it, you can see everybody go, huh, I think that's true. I don't quite know what to do with it, but it's true, because you just can't. Where is the boundary? I don't know, because I don't know myself. I don't know what makes me tick. I don't know what's right for me. I don't know what's wrong for me. And then the external locus of control part comes in and you hand it over and you say, I don't know, what is my boundary? What do you think I should do? And that person does not know. They know how to get their needs met. So they'll put their boundary in place and you'll have to jump over yours and sacrifice yourself for their needs. It's interesting. It's interesting how it works. So once you know and you start that piece of work, the capacity just grows and you start to really, really move into better spaces for sure.
Yeah, I love that. We've talked so much, and we could probably do like 3 more episodes of this, but this was a great conversation. I know that we talk about, well, there's 2 things I meant to tell you. So I just wrote this ebook called The Shift to Boundaries, and I wrote another one called The Shifted Advocate. And The Shifted Advocate was teaching people to be able to advocate for yourself in situations where you might not be able to, like at the doctor's office or with your kids or anything like that. And I wrote it thinking, I would like to have had something with me when I was at the doctor's office before I go into the office and say, all right, I'm at the doctor's office. Let me look at these 5 or 6 things so I know what to say, because typically I would think about what I wanted to say. And then when I walked out of the office, I'd be like, you know what? I should have said this didn't work for me or
Yeah.
whatever. So I wrote that just because there's been so many people that were like, I didn't know the right thing to say, or to my children, like even, or my husband or my best friend or anything like that. Like there's things that I don't like that they say. I just don't have the words to say them. And so I think that's a good
That's
segue into that.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think we can link in with that somehow and share that
Yeah.
knowledge wherever in both our circles. You can't underestimate how difficult it is if you had a lifetime with poor boundaries. It's not as easy. And people who have strong boundaries just say no. It's a physiological response. It's almost impossible at
Yeah.
first to do that. It really is. So I think it's really important for women like us to be able to help that space and to be able to just offer wisdom and tools and things that have worked for us.
I love
And like you say, things that I wish I'd had. That's what
Right.
I'm passing forward, the things I wish I'd
Yeah.
had.
Yeah. So we always end with a journal prompt. So I've got journal prompts all the time in my head, but do you have anything that you would use as a journal prompt when we're talking about conversations like this?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I think I've got
Yeah.
thousands hidden in Mojo School somewhere. There's thousands. But I think in the context of this conversation, a really good journal prompt would be, well, maybe two. The first one I would say is, where are you finding yourself saying, why is this always happening to me? If you find yourself saying, oh, this always happens to me, these kind of people are always coming to me, or this situation just keeps happening, just reflect on that, because that will be the monster that you create subconsciously. You'll be drawing that in whether you think you are or not. So it's a good sort of initial piece of shadow work. Where do I find myself saying, why is this always happening? Because those repeating patterns are unhealed wounds somewhere at the root.
Yeah.
So start looking at the symptoms and start looking at the roots. So that's a question there. And I guess the other one would be, where do you find yourself keeping yourself small? Because in every single woman, you might repress it, but you know that you're meant for more. And you kind of know somewhere there's a little spark somewhere that wants to come out. But then, your nervous system will stop you. So when you get to the point where you can maybe be visible, or you can speak some truth, or you stop because it's too frightening, and your nervous system tells you to stop because it's dangerous, right? So maybe reflect and just journal. When was the last time that you recognize that you kept yourself small to try and keep yourself safe? Because that will give you a clue. They're all clues, the shadow, to shine a light on that shadow and bring something out.
I love that. Jane, thank you very, very much. This was great. You can find
Pleasure.
Jane at mymojoschool.com. And you can follow her on Instagram and Facebook at Mrs. Mojo Mindset. And we'll put all those in the links for the show notes. But you'll be able to look at that. So if this conversation stirred something with you, which it did with me, because like I'm telling you, there's probably 3 more episodes we could keep going with this forever.
For sure.
Take a moment with the journal prompts that she gave you. And sometimes the most profound shifts I feel like happen with just being honest about who you are. And I think sometimes sitting with who we are and then saying, and I'm okay with it, I think is one of the biggest things, because I think we try so hard to say, I need to be like this or I need to be like that. And I think just sometimes sitting with, this is who I am. I'm okay with that. And that's just the way it is.
For sure.
Yeah. Anything you want to say before we end?
I think we've covered so much. And like you say, we could go on. There's so many different topics and offshoots that we could go to. But I just, I really wish the very best for all your listeners, all your viewers. And just, my one piece of parting advice would be to recognize that you have power. You have so much potential, so much power. And you don't need to keep yourself small, and it is safe to do this piece of work now. There are other people that are there to guide and to help and support, and do your research, start reading, don't stick with one thing, try lots of things and see what works for you. But you can do it, even if you feel like things are quite desperate at the moment and you're stuck. There's a piece of learning there. There's a route that needs to come up, and you have this amazing potential it's within touching distance, just waiting for you to step into. So yeah, accepting that part of you is the piece of work, right? It's not being afraid of that, of your light. Just let it shine like a Care Bear. That's what I think. Yeah.
Oh, I got the Care Bears. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any current registrations going on right now?
Yes, I do. I mean, I have within Mojo School, if anybody wants to have a look at the link, I've got so many courses, all these topics right the way around the medicine wheel. So people can dip in and out and just, whatever course takes your fancy. But I've got some really low cost programs as well, which give you access all areas. So that's really cool. But what I'm doing at the moment is I have a group called Conscious Creators at the moment, which is really cool. Our next call is on Friday, and we meet every full moon. How witchy is that? But there's a reason. It's really energetically aligned. So we have a 1 hour power hour video call on a full moon. So everyone's got access to the whole of Mojo School, and I kind of hold hand and guide people through all of the self-paced courses. We do a lot of work on energy anatomy and exactly what we're talking about now. We take people through the sacred nervous system, and there's some energy updates for the month ahead, good days to heal, good days to launch, good days to do different things based on what the energy is saying. And I have a really, really powerful course launching on Friday, a brand new one. It wasn't meant to be launched yet, so I didn't mention it when we talked, but it's called Healing the Witch Wound. And it's probably a good starting point for any of your listeners that are kind of really sort of feel something from this conversation, but aren't ready for a program and aren't really sure. It's a really good sort of just toe in the water, because it talks about the reason that you stay small and ancestral lineage, and the reason that women in particular find it difficult to step into their power. It's the whole thing's like a ritual. So there's little micro rituals at the end to do to practice self-compassion and to find your voice. And if you're struggling with being visible anywhere, with its business or pricing yourself or having a difficult conversation with your partner or putting a boundary in, it's a great piece of work on Friday. And it's a full moon on Friday, so I'm launching it then. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Jane, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning into the Shifted podcast. We've got so many really cool women that we've been talking to lately. Everything, like I said, will be linked here. And again, I'm Amira Davis. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I will be here until next time.